The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
Hey Lee, how's it going?
Hey, Ashish, it's good. All good around here.
Awesome. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Sustainable Voice. As you can tell, we're your co-hosts. We're here. We have an interesting topic today. We're going to be talking about world-class citizens.
Yes, and how to raise kids to be world-class
Mhm.
citizens, right?
Well, and
That's
you've
near and
raised
dear
two
to
of
my
them.
heart.
You've raised two of them yourself that are definitely world-class citizens, and mine are younger than yours, but we're hoping to follow in those same tracks, which
I think,
is
yeah, yours have probably got more continents under their belt than my kids do at this point, but
so it's
yeah.
interesting that you start there. Because I would argue that raising a world-class citizen has nothing to do with the world.
For sure. I was thinking that same thing when we were talking about this, because that's definitely not where we started with being world-class citizens.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was somebody told me this a long time ago. You are as happy as your least happy child,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it doesn't matter whether you're a homebody watching sports on Sunday or whether you're traveling in some remote part of the world, you're always going to be as happy as your least happy child. And do you remember when you would take any kind of a vacation or excursion with your parents, like I did with mine? It was kind of whatever they said went, right?
Oh,
There
yeah.
was there was no say in the matter. It
Oh,
was just go.
you
So
did.
I'll never forget. I was God, 13 years old, I think, 13. We were living in New York. I know I was younger than that. I was 11. We had gone to Hershey Park, Pennsylvania from New York. And we didn't have enough money to get a nice hotel. So we were looking for something along the way. And of course, the cheapest hotels were all sold out. So we actually spent one night living in the car.
Oh, wow.
So we got to Hershey Park, and the whole time I look back now going, no, we could have gotten like a day's in for 30 bucks, 40 bucks at the time. We could have gotten that. Even that was like the maximum. That was a stretch for us, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we had gas, we had everything counted down to the penny
Yeah.
in terms of it. And so that first night, it was our car was a 1980 Pontiac Bonneville. This thing was a beast, and so I slept on the front seat. My father slept on the driver's side seat. My mother slept on the mother's side seat, and we just, I couldn't really recline the seats back then. It was one big bench, but it was basically there. And my mother woke up and was like, "Oh, my neck is stiff, my back is stiff." My father said his back hurt. I was perfectly fine.
And see, and you remember that. I
I,
had a similar childhood experience like that. But yeah, that's what you remember
yeah,
is that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You had a similar. So what happened in yours?
We did the classic, this was in the 70s. We did the classic put everybody in the Griswold station
The
wagon. And
station wagon.
we did. We had a station wagon and we went to Disney World, right?
Not Wally World.
No, not Wally World. And we drove from North Carolina down there, and it was the same deal, in the station wagon. We probably did stay in a $30 night hotel because it had
Mm.
the magic things. You put the quarters in the bed shape.
The best shakes. The Wawa beds.
Yes, we stayed there. But the thing I remember most about our trip was my dad going to the fire station next to the hotel and asking them where to find the best pizza. And I thought that was brilliant because of course, who would know where the best pizza is? The firemen would. So it's funny the things you remember from that trip. There was plenty I remembered that wasn't fun about that trip, but the thing I was most impressed about was his resourcefulness with the
Yeah,
pizza.
yeah, there were definitely things that weren't fun about that trip. I'll tell you, I kept this picture till I was probably in college, but apparently they were taking photo shoots of this world's most dangerous person, and there was me, 11-year-old, chubby like this, in some wannabe karate pose, basically, pretending like I actually knew what I was doing. I hadn't learned how to fight yet. It was coming later on. I learned how to fight later on, but it was basically it wasn't there yet, and
Yeah.
it was just this. So, and I had the eyebrow and everything was one of
Oh, I
these like
love
that.
it.
Like it was. So everybody would, and everybody would come to the house and see that picture there. Do you know how to fight? Well, yes. Watch this. And I
So you
would
were
pull one of these.
manifesting that, right? That's what we would say
Oh, I was
nowadays. You were,
absolutely. And so, but you see that little thing that though it was an overpriced photo, but it didn't cost as much as it does today. We were in Hershey Park. You could have put, I don't even remember the rides. I don't remember the amusement parks. I don't remember the rides. I remember the photo. But then I remembered reading a story later on about the person taking the photo.
Mm.
And I remembered how they were just there. It was like a struggling photographer. They were not part of they were not employed by Hershey Park. They were not employed by anybody. It was just, that was a weekend gig for them. So
Mm.
they were trying to raise extra money. And so I started basically just doing research on freelancers that work in amusement parks, right? Roadies, carnies, whatever you want to call them. You know, and then just in general, even the biggest amusement parks, even at Disney World, for example, there's some section of it of people that are there because it's a second gig,
I didn't know
or
that.
yeah, somebody to just
Wow.
get them by. So I started doing research on that, and you started, you know, it's funny because that was the first one. The second one was a year later, or 2 years later. We went to Action Park in New Jersey. Action Park is the place. There's a documentary on this place on one of the I think at HBO or something has a documentary on it now. This place was basically where you go to when you couldn't afford amusement parks. And now the documentary talks about all the kids that secretly died because these
No,
rides were death
come
traps.
on,
Oh
really?
yeah, I'm
Oh my
serious.
God.
I'm serious. And they're showcasing these rides. There's this cliff jump, and I'm looking at it going, I did that. And then they show that the water wasn't deep enough, and kids were breaking limbs as they fell in the water, and the water was ice cold, and it was like landing in ice, and they didn't catch the trajectory. And nothing happened to me. Then they showed this luge going down where apparently one of the banks was too steep, and kids were flying off and breaking their neck. I'm like, I did that. Then they're looking at all these rides, like it's Action Park, it's this, and there's this all sorts of different slides and rides and whatnot. I'm looking at all of them. I did all of these.
And you live to tell.
And I live to tell them. And there's documentaries talking. So I was showing it to my family, to my kids, and I go, look, I did all of these rides. And I go, and I did need a tetanus shot afterwards. Meanwhile, you're looking at that going, the place was shut down because the guy got sued and everything else. It's a documentary. It's called Action Park on HBO. You need to watch
Okay, I'm gonna
this.
find it. Yeah, sounds
You
fun.
need to watch this, okay?
Okay.
It's on YouTube or somewhere. It literally, I was, you know, at the time, obviously, I didn't know. But as going there, what I noticed being there was the area around, it was Vernon, New Jersey. The area around New Jersey, as you're going through, you start remembering odd things. And I think that's where the story of a world-class citizen starts. It's not, you know, we like to think that it's this elaborate memory that you remember the first time you saw the pyramids, the first time you saw an animal. It could be, but it's going to be the memories that you don't expect, right? Yours is the Griswold station, right?
Yeah.
Right. Did Christy Brinkley happen to drive past your station?
She may have.
Yeah. Did your dad swerve the car at all? So
Oh God. Yeah, I just remember, you know, we almost had the imaginary line down the middle of the back seat where my brother and I couldn't touch each other, you know, like you touch, and then you'd like try to take your finger and just put it slightly over the line. My sister was in the way back, because that's what you called it, the way back, with a pallet with all her toys. With, of course, none of us had seatbelts.
Well, that's I remember that. I remember being on a road trip somewhere in that same Bonneville, the muffler fell off the back of the car as we were driving. So we had to stop and pull over, and some random guy came to help and use my shoelaces to actually tie the muffler back up. It got us about 10 miles before the laces burned through. And then we had to put some wire down, and somebody had to jerry with some red wire to hold it back up. But
see, our memories are stories of survival.
Yeah, it's memories of things that are you don't expect them to be there, right? And that's and what happens is this: it's not the memory of what happened to you, but I remember the guy who helped us. He was wearing a black leather jacket, the black hat backwards. He was a typical New Yorker. He was a really nice guy, and he came and he basically was helping us. Like, oh, he's like, hey, I remember, because I remember talking to him. My father had a British accent and didn't understand what he was saying, and was telling him like, hey, you use laces. These laces aren't going to work. You need to use string. And it's all, you know, what he heard is, you know, these laces don't work. I heard some guy talking in slang, and I understood everything he was saying. And you know, talking about he was talking about how the laces, he goes, whose idea were the, and I remember he asked, he goes, whose idea were these laces? And my father points to me and goes, it was his idea.
Oh my God.
I was like 12 years old. I'm like, wait a second, hold on. So
funny.
but you start remembering like that guy didn't have to help us.
Yeah.
He could have just walked by, we pulled over. We didn't know. The car sounded like a race car. It's like, oh, this is cool. It sounds like a race car. And I'm thinking the hubcap flew off and whatnot. And then he's like, no, man, your muffler broke off. And we looked down and sure enough, this is big pipe hanging on the ground. And he knew what to do and he didn't have to help us. He didn't ask for money, he didn't do anything. He's like, just this will hold you till you get to your nearest garage. You didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember. Those are the memories that shape, right? You don't know what's happening, but those are the memories that help shape you. I remember we had flown to Toronto later, a couple of years later to go, I think it was like a year later or something. It was like a stretch. We had flown to Toronto to go to a New Year's Eve party at a family friend's house. And actually it's the family that introduced me and my wife, as a matter of fact.
Oh, cool.
And that's the house where my in-laws and my parents met, and they apparently met when we were 7 years old. And I had no idea. Neither my wife and I had an idea about this. But on the way to the airport, Newark Airport, because it was the cheapest flight to get to Toronto, even though we lived in New York, the transmission gives out on the car about 10 miles from the airport. So you have to basically, now you're driving 10 miles an hour, but it sounds like you're going 100 miles an hour. And to get the car, they're like, we just have to get the airplane. So we get the plane, get to Toronto. We come back. Yeah, we called AAA and whatnot. We were so far out of band in terms of what we were supposed to do. But what was really cool was the fact that this tow truck driver took us beyond. It was nighttime. It was a Sunday night. I had to go to school the next day. This tow truck driver didn't have to drive 2 hours.
Wow.
Yet he did.
And
he didn't charge us for it. Maybe because we looked like we couldn't pay for it, or because he didn't want to charge us for it, whatever it was. But he didn't charge us for it. And you start thinking about all those things. And you've known me for a long time now. You know how I'm wired.
Yeah.
You can clearly see how these experiences have wired me today.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I think for you as well. So I'm going to ask you a question. We've talked about your amazing history with expedition ships. We've talked about the trailblazer that you were for women in expedition ships. What happened in your childhood that made you so adventurous? Or better yet, what happened in your childhood that got you to enlist in the Coast Guard?
Oh God. Well, see, now we're getting ready to get on the therapy couch. Just suffice it to say that I was restless in my 20s, and I didn't feel like I lived in the South, and there were just things going on in the South that didn't jibe with my values. I kind of knew at that point, and I just was trying to figure out how to get as far away as I could, and how could I do it when I didn't have any money. And so my path out of the South was through the Coast Guard. And so
that's
now
actually
here I am back in the South and loving it, but it's a different place than it was then. That's
actually really cool.
Yeah.
And see, that's where we have a second part to this story, to this whole theme as well. But really, when it comes to raising world-class citizens, it isn't about the most expensive trip. Yes, you want to travel well. Yes, you want to have a luxury experience. Yes, you want to have we talk about sustainability, and funny enough, it comes up more often than not. Like, oh, I want to teach my kids how to give back. You don't have to teach them that. Show them.
Right.
Don't teach them how to give back. Show them how you give back. Right? Our children are supposed to be a better, smarter, better looking version of ourselves. Right? They're basically version 2.0. And that's awesome. That's great. And their kids are version 2.0 of them. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But version 2.0 has to be programmed out of version 1.0. It has to be built on top of version 1. It's not a fresh rebuild. Any software, any platform, any technology, anything in life, even a car, there's a foundation to start on. We're that foundation, right? We are version 1.0. We're that foundation. And our kids are version 2.0. And I know it, and we have so many conversations, and the timing of this is perfect because I'm actually, as we're recording this podcast, I'm actually leaving this episode. I'm leaving in 2 days to the Family Travel Association Summit. I'm an advisory board member on the Family Travel Association, and I'm actually giving a talk on this specific topic, on world-class citizens. And it's important because I did the math, sitting with some people much smarter than me, and started counting down from the age that a child can really understand what they're seeing, which according to child psychologists is around 5 and 6, where they start understanding what they're seeing in the world, start formulating their first opinions of what they're seeing around 5 and 6. From that point until they leave for higher education or for work at 18 or for enlistment, whatever the case may be at 18, if you count out 2 weeks in summer, the Christmas vacation, spring break, Thanksgiving, any extended holiday that you can go somewhere or do something with them, you know how much it adds up to from 6 to 18? Take a wild guess. Take a guess.
A year.
Not even.
Not even a year?
252 days.
Wow.
That's it.
That's all
That's
you
it.
have.
And
Yeah.
in 252 days, do you want to tell your children that they should give back and be better citizens, or do you want to show them?
Mm-hmm.
You have 252 days to shape version 2.0,
Right.
right? It's not about what happens in school. It's not about what happens it's not about what happens at home. It's not about what happens. Yes, that's all part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
But when your kids go to school, they are learning the stuff they need for life, arguably.
Mm-hmm.
When they are at home, they are learning civil skills and everything else. Every aspect of it is about preparing them for life. But it's those travel experiences, it's those socially responsible experiences, whether it's through travel, whether it's domestic, whether it's at home, but those socially responsible experiences that shape who your children are.
Right.
And that's so important to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you think about it, 252 days. You have less than a year to shape a child for their entire life. And this is interesting, right? Because if you go to East Africa, and this puts it in perspective, and you look at a wildebeest or a zebra, right? And it's February is calving season, the newborns are born.
Mm.
Within a few hours of being born, those calves are standing up. Within a few days, they're walking. Within a few days, they're running. And if they can make it past that point without being hunted by a predator, then there's a possibility to obviously live a full life. But they are responsible for themselves within a few hours. When a predator attacks the herd, they're surrounded. But at some point, the mother abandons the calf if they know they can't survive. The mother will literally not lay down for the calf. If you think about it, right? If somebody, God forbid, something happened to your child or my child, we would give our life to protect them,
right,
without even batting an eye.
Mm-hmm.
A wildebeest cuts their losses. A zebra cuts their losses.
Mm.
So then the question becomes, we have 252 days to shape our citizens, or we too have to cut our losses.
Mm.
Think about that. After a child is 18 years old, yes, you're still their parent, but do you really think you can shape their mind at that point? Do you really think you can shape who they are at that point? That's it. They are who they're going to be at that point.
Yeah, I don't know. I like to think, well, my kids still come to me for advice, but I guess that's different than the foundation has been laid. Yeah.
Advice is different.
Yeah.
Advice is very different. I agree with you on that, right? A wildebeest that has survived and has not been hunted will still follow the herds as to where they're going. A zebra will still follow the herds. They're not abandoning. They will come to you for advice. But which ones of your actions are shaping them, or are they shaping you at that point? Prime example, okay?
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Prime example. We're on a podcast right now. Where do you think this idea was born? It sure as hell wasn't from either of us. Not from our generation.
Oh, a podcast of doing podcasting?
Yeah.
I don't know. Where was it from?
It wasn't from our generation.
Oh, radio? I don't know.
Well, meaning it was from the next generation.
Storytelling. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Storytelling, we perfected.
Yeah.
Our ancestors perfected. We perfected. We got it better. The idea of having episodic podcasts didn't come from our generation. It came from your children's generation and my children's generation. Right now.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now in India, India, the most populous country in the world, one of the fastest growing economies in the world, the fourth largest economy in the world. They have taken a $1.5 billion loan from the World Bank, not so they can feed the hungry or whatnot, because they are a thriving economy. It's for infrastructure building, to set up wind turbines, alternative energy means within this country.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for sure that my parents' generation, that my generation didn't do this. The generation afterwards, they're the ones that absolutely care about this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at a certain point, our children are shaping our vision. They're shaping our views. They're shaping our idea of what kind of citizens we are. The roles change.
Yeah, you're right. I'd never thought of it that way, but you're right.
It's amazing, right? I mean, your daughters are, the way you talk about them and the way you've raised them, and we've talked in past episodes just about the Herculean job you've done in raising them. Honestly, it's amazing. I had a conversation yesterday with an industry peer who I was talking to her, and she was talking about her stepfather. He passed away 5 years ago, succumbing to the effects of Agent Orange from Vietnam. And she said something in passing. She said, "He's the only father. He's not my real father, but he's the only father I knew." And she said it quickly, so I stopped and I said, "I don't mean to pry, but you said something quickly there. If you'd like to share, I would be honored to hear it." Her biological father left them bone dry, cleared out everything, didn't give them access to anything, and her mom had to work 3 jobs just to make sure they paid the bills. Right, and it shaped her. Right, it shaped her, and we talked about struggles in our childhoods. We talked about the adversity that I faced, that she faced, that you faced in childhood. We talked about all of us and the adversities we face and how it shapes us. And then she talked about her mom and how her mom her dream has been to see Egypt. Her dream has been to see Egypt all her life, and how she was determined to make this happen so that she could show her mom what she's done, what she's made of herself. And it also gave her a perspective that when people start really getting down on problems, she stops and says, "Let's get a grip. Let's talk about what real problems are," right? And it shaped her. And I started thinking about that yesterday, and then listening to what we're talking about this morning, right? And the fact, and she is now shaping the ideas that her mother has, because her mother never in her wildest dreams ever thought she would ever get to Egypt. She just always dreamed of it. It was always this far-fetched dream that was meant for people, not her. And now now her daughter is fulfilling that dream. Isn't it the parents' job to try to fulfill the kids' dreams? But at some point, the kids start fulfilling the parents' dreams.
Right. I know my kids do, for me, for sure. Like
Right.
the things they're doing, exceeding my dreams for them, not even expectations, but my dreams for them.
You have one daughter who is enlisted. Did you guys ever talk about your time in the Coast Guard?
Oh yeah, all the time. It's very much shaped her, and sort of informed her.
And what branch is she in?
She's in the Air Force. She's learning to fly planes, fly jets.
So let's think about that for a second. Let's think about that for a second. You are the queen of the seas. And let's talk about this. We talked about this earlier. You were a pioneer in terms of women running expedition ships and being on ships. You basically blazed the trail for women to follow. How you haven't written a book is beyond me. But it's coming. Trust me, it's coming. Guys, don't worry. I'm talking her into it. Don't worry. It's coming. It's coming. Don't worry. She's going to write a book. I'm going to talk her into it. Don't worry. If you see this podcast go off air, it means she got sick of me asking her to write a book. Okay. But if you think about that, look at how many, I know there are obviously female pilots in the Air Force, but the gender gap is still a huge conversation that we have even today.
Yeah.
It's a huge conversation, not just in terms of serving, but the fact that she's going to be a pilot, and it's not, Do you know offhand how many female pilots are in the Air Force?
I don't, but it's becoming significant. I
Good.
don't think they've reached parity yet, but they're close. I mean, some of her classmates are women, and we
That's awesome.
know, yeah, it's getting better, you know. And I don't, I think she does have some gender struggles, but not nearly. I
As
mean,
enough as
you
many.
know, I mean, I think she feels the pressure to prove herself every day, but I think anybody would, regardless of their gender. You know, it's
All
very
right.
competitive.
All right. Well, folks, I'm gonna give Lee some homework right now. I'm gonna give her some homework right now. I want you to ask your daughter if she's ever told your story to her friends.
I know she has.
There you go.
Yeah.
My job here is done. My work here is done. Elvis is leaving the building.
Well,
That's how you make a world-class citizen. It starts there. You
hmm
can't teach them. You have to show them.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
we're going to talk about in the next episode, we're going to be talking a lot about what steps it takes. The next episode, we're going to be talking about the different types of steps and the fact that you are as happy as your least happy child and
Yeah.
what changes we can make as parents. By no means am I giving therapy advice. It's not that, but just from experiences. Your experiences, I'm right behind you. We're following your lead on this one.
Mm,
But it's
you're doing a great
basically,
job.
thank you. But we need to we're going to talk about that next episode. We're going to be talking about the stuff we do, not what we teach, what we do. You can't teach your kids how to be world-class citizens. You have to show them. And
hmm
you don't show them by telling them, you show them by doing.
That's true.
Right.
Cool. Well, I'm excited. I hope you have
Sure.
a good and successful conference. I'm excited to hear about that when you get back.
It's gonna be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be just absolutely great. I'm really looking forward to it.
Cool.
It's and as every conference I go to now, I believe my father's watching me.
Yeah.
And that he sees me and that he hears me. And so in addition to being in the room, I'll be speaking to him as well, which will be great and interesting at the same time.
Yeah.
So that'll be there.
Good
So,
deal. All
well,
right.
till next time, everybody, make sure you, I'll say like Casey Kasem, I guess, but just as you guys are looking forward to the next episode, please make sure you are the best example of yourselves. Set the best example of yourselves. Make sure that you are finding big successes in small places in your world. Be the best version of yourself because your children are watching you as well.
Hear, hear.
Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you for listening to The Sustainable Voice. If you have a success story of your own, please reach out and share it with us. Would love to hear from you. See you next time.